best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah, before we get to the episode we're going to review today, I wanted to mention that we're, next time, a couple weeks from now, we're going to do a Treksperts Multi-Topic Extravaganza.
Yes.
Like we've been doing with Geeks Not Nerds. Me and Vince did a 4-part, basically a Q&A, a multi-topic extravaganza. And this time, Sarah and I are going to do one because it's been requested by some folks. And it's the same thing, except, of course, it's all about Star Trek, because that's what we do here on Ask the Treksperts. And so we're going to ask you folks to ask us things as usual, but questions that can be answered in just a minute or two, and things that may not make sense to do a whole episode on, but that you'd like to just...
If it makes more sense to do a full episode on it, we'll probably save it to do a full episode on it.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to ask those too, of course, as usual, and we'll just put them in a different spot, like we did with the GNN one. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and announce that now. It's been requested. I thought it'd be fun to do for this, and we get, again, just like on Geeks Not Nerds, we sometimes get questions that are not bad questions. We just can't do a whole episode on. So I'm sure there are folks that might have a quick question where they just want to know something they don't know, or a quick opinion about or something like that. So anyway, if you'll leave those in the comments below, and if we get enough of them, that's what we'll do next time. Otherwise, we'll wait a while, but I would hope we would get enough to do at least one part of that for next time. Today's episode request comes from AstroStar49, and that person is asking us to review the Galileo 7. So we just watched Galileo 7 again.
Yes, we did.
And Sarah, a quick rundown on what Galileo 7 is.
Well, it's an episode where not much happens. Sorry if I'm giving away my opinion too early.
No, that was such a spoiler.
Oh, man.
TOS first season?
Yes, TOS toward the end of first season. I think it's like episode 17 or something. I'm not sure,
but you're right, yeah.
So, later first season, and basically they're going on a mission to give some medicine to some plague victims, but midway in their trip...
On the Galileo 7.
Not on the Galileo 7, on the Starship Enterprise.
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then
yes.
Halfway there, they find a quasar.
Right.
And they say, we must investigate because that is a Starfleet mandate that you must investigate quasars. So Kirk sends Spock and 6 other people off in a shuttle called the Galileo. And it has a 7 after the NCC-17 Part 1. And they go investigate, and their ship gets blown off course onto a planet in the middle of it. And they're stuck there, and Spock is probably going to kill them all before they get back to the Enterprise. But he doesn't kill them all.
What do you mean?
Well, because his orders, according to everybody else on the shuttle,
are going to get them
all killed.
Right. We'll get into that. So it's basically just a big morality play.
Well, it's just the point of the episode is Spock in command is horrible because he's logical.
I disagree with that as being the theme of the episode.
It's logic versus emotion.
But let's get into this.
And so,
so it's a morality play of logic versus emotion, and actually less of a morality play and more of a philosophical debate.
Yeah.
Although a not very well constructed one.
No, but because it's just dealing with extremes and not really realistic extremes.
Yeah. Here's what I disagree with. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the episode is going with the other people on the shuttlecraft. I used to. Here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's what's really interesting about this. The first time I saw this episode, and I've only seen it a couple times because I don't really care for it. Mm-hmm. The first time I saw Galileo 7, I thought Spock was a total jerk.
Okay.
Like, I had a totally different experience with it the first time I saw it a few years back.
Sure.
And I was like, Spock is rigid and cold and obnoxious, and more so than usual. And I thought, you know, because he's supposed to be a logic and calculating guy, mm-hmm. they're overemphasizing that and making him more extremely logical, mm-hmm. or more actually extremely unemotional. Mm-hmm. And so I was siding with the other people on the shuttle. This time I had the exact reverse experience.
I've only seen this a couple times myself for the same reason. And I actually had the opposite reaction the first time and subsequent times I've seen it.
Yeah.
Where Spock was just fine. He was just being Spock. And I like the logical Vulcan thing, so I'm cool with that. I thought they made all the people on the ship, and especially that one guy, that lieutenant, who just kept questioning everything Spock said.
Yeah.
Just way too emotional. And I'm like, it's the end of first season. Have you never served on a ship with Spock before?
That's the place where it immediately loses credibility with me, is that it acts as though the first officer leading an away mission is highly unusual.
Yeah.
And this isn't just because, and I don't think I'm thinking that just because in TNG that's the standard way to do it, but it just seems to me like that's something that would happen all the time.
You'd think.
And it's not like Spock doesn't have to take the helm of the bridge whenever Kirk's not around. I just feel like we've had enough episodes prior to this, especially that...
different duties on the ship that would require Spock to lead some sort of a group in doing something important because he's second in command. So,
my impression of it this time was not only Spock's not that far off base. There are some places
certainly
where it seems like they're trying too hard to emphasize the difference between emotional people and unemotional people. Yeah. But
and I could see some places where his the way his logic worked, the places to which his logic brought him, would cause the other members of the crew to be uncomfortable. You know,
right?
Maybe he's a little bit flippant about something that they think is really important.
Yeah, and tag that because we'll go back to it because we need to talk about the thing about burying the corpse.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is this time the way what I felt about the other people on the ship besides McCoy, for the most part, is it wasn't so much that Spock's way out there; it's that everybody else is just racist.
Speciesist.
Totally. And McCoy always had that.
Yeah.
And that was but the thing about it is,
shtick.
And it's a joke.
Yeah.
And in this, it wasn't funny, and it wasn't trying to be funny.
No, they were just being insubordinate.
Yeah. So a lot of things about just the structure and the initial premise of it aren't working. McCoy shouldn't have been there. And here's the reason I say that. McCoy, the way he's written here, shouldn't have been there because for the majority of the episode, until things start coming to a head at toward the end where they're about to actually finally get the shuttle up in the air, McCoy is the one out of all of them who's the least spoken and the most neutral.
Yeah.
And that's weird. You get the sense that if Kirk's not there, he doesn't even feel the need to argue with Spock. As if he only... And I get the impression... I don't really get this impression for the rest of the series, but if this were the only episode you were really looking at compared to another episode where it was the triad, where it was Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, you'd think that the only reason McCoy ever makes fun of Spock or has issues with Spock is for Kirk's benefit. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, he wants to make Kirk laugh. Okay.
Because if you get Kirk and Spock together or Spock and McCoy together in say the movies, they're the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this episode could have been much improved had it gone with the normal original series formula of the red shirts say next to nothing, and Spock and McCoy have their little...
Spock and McCoy should have been the ones on the outs on this episode. This episode would have been better served, actually, had it been one of those episodes like we get a lot in TNG and DS9, and I think maybe there's even even Voyager, where we get those two characters who are established as not liking each other that we strand on a planet together. That's what this should have been.
And it would have been like that, except there were some other people there. And
right. Or you could have isolated them somewhere on that planet.
Yeah, and Spock's in charge, and he's giving these people orders, and they're maybe raising an eyebrow or something at certain points and being like, well, I'm not sure, but you're the boss. And McCoy would be the one then to step up and say, are you mad?
That's right, because what you have with Spock and McCoy are already, and this is what I was getting at, you already have established personalities that clash. You don't need to make up generic ones.
No.
And that's what you had here. Everybody else on that shuttle either had nothing to do, like the chick.
Yeah.
The girl there had nothing to do. And then you had the two guys who were the most outspoken, who were just walking stereotypes of we're humans and we're emotional and we think it's good to do everything on impulse because that's the opposite of what Spock does, who we multiple times call a machine.
Yeah, and humans, of course, never use logic ever.
Ever, yeah.
Really.
It was too overly simplified.
It was.
And that's really the crux of it. I mean, if I could just boil it down, in a nutshell, it's too oversimplified. Let's throw out what's good. Leonard Nimoy's performance is fine.
I don't think the premise is bad.
I don't think the premise of strand them on a planet and explore the differences between Vulcans and humans is bad.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was fine. The creatures on the planet were kind of silly, but you needed a threat. I mean...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you could, and you of course could complain about how they're not very threatening and how they don't make sense either.
Yeah.
One of the weird things.
They were just kind of a generic TOS kind of planet threat species.
One of the weird things is that Spock is supposed to be all about logic, but he actually does some things that aren't very logical and says they're logical, and it was, and I thought that was a little bit strange.
No, the one thing I thought was weird. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Spock's strategy for dealing with the animal things didn't really make any sense. Right?
Well, he didn't want to kill them, and so you scare them off. But
remember when he said that it's illogical that they would do what they did.
That they would come back?
Yeah.
Well, yes, if they were scared off.
Yeah.
But I mean, you I'm not sure you could make the assumption necessarily that they'd be permanently scared off.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think you can either. That's what isn't that what he did though?
Yeah.
You just make the assumption that if we threaten them, there's no way they would come back.
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is, that's kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
It's where
that's true.
You could safely assume that they wouldn't come back. But if they do, you shouldn't necessarily be surprised.
That's my point. Is that he's not just surprised. He acts like it's impossible. He's like because my logic, you know what I mean? Like you can't use logic to predict the future.
No.
And that's the thing. So like I'm just saying there were certainly and especially at the end with what he does with what he does in the shuttle. You get the sense that
you mean to jettison the fuel?
Yeah.
But see, that's the reverse.
No,
where he calls it illogical. But
yeah, exactly.
It's not.
But my point is that the writing in this episode is making him oversimplified in places also.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying. And yeah, when you get to that part with the where he jettisons the fuel, he later says that he made, and everybody else says too, that he made an illogical decision because he was desperate. Out of desperation.
It was a desperate situation.
And I took issue with that.
Yeah.
Because it was the only thing that made sense to do at the time.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It was consistent with what he said logic was at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning of the episode, he said, let's do every conceivable thing, even if we know it's not going to work. Because the logical thing to do is to throw things at the wall and see what happens.
Well, exactly.
and hope that something sticks.
And the choice here was you have 45 minutes before your orbit decays, and you burn up if you do nothing.
Yeah.
So you have 45 minutes for the Enterprise to see you.
So you might as well do something.
Or you have 6 minutes, and you do something major that a ship that's already left orbit obviously, might see.
Yeah, it's like setting up a flare.
Yeah, exactly.
And so early on in the episode, he says, let's send out a communique. And the guys are like, well, that's stupid. Nobody's the Enterprise can't hear. He's not going to be able to hear that through the ion storm. And he says, yes, but the logical thing to do is to try.
Yeah.
And by the same logic, what he did at the end was to try, and then he himself said it was out of desperation.
Yeah.
And I thought that that they were making up meanings for words.
Yeah.
That they took desperation to mean panic.
Yeah.
Because desperation can be a state of being as much as it is an emotion.
You can be in a desperate situation without actually having any emotional reaction.
Yeah. So I could be in a desperate situation. I could be in my house and it's on fire and I have no way out.
Yeah.
And that's a desperate situation. I may not survive. It doesn't make it any more or less of a desperate situation depending on how I react to that situation.
Yeah. Exactly.
I could be completely stone cold and just stand there and let myself die, and it's no more or less a desperate situation.
Or you could be running around the house in a panic, and it's still the same thing.
It's a lazy script.
Yeah.
And compare it to other TOS episodes and other points where Spock does the logical thing versus the emotional thing, or he chooses the emotional thing. It's a lazy episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it just really is, especially when you just compare it to other TOS episodes earlier or later, and you'll find that they're just much better written and they make more sense generally.
Kirk, of course, has very little to do in this episode. He stands on the ship and gets yelled at by a commissioner who wants him to leave orbit right away.
Yeah, Commissioner Ferris Wheel.
And every scene that he's in is exactly the same.
Yeah, he says, you know, you don't have much time. You have 2 hours and 52 seconds left.
Well, that's a classic thing for TOS to do, though,
Yeah,
to do a countdown and tell us how long we have to survive or whatever.
Yeah, but he got annoying after a while. I mean, how much of a jerk can you be? And it doesn't make the time go any faster.
Talk about, because I thought this was interesting, you mentioned this to me earlier, talk about how you used to interpret the episode title.
Well, see, there are 7 people who go down on the shuttle,
so
I thought it was the
that.
Galileo 7, referring to the 7 people who were on the shuttle. And I watched this episode this time and happened to notice that while the shuttle was still in the ship, that it was 1701/7.
Right, but you didn't remember that the shuttle was actually also the Galileo 7?
No, I just thought it was the Galileo.
Wow.
And so I
okay.
thought there was...
Well, and it's referred to that way a lot. Yeah.
And see, I just thought it was, the Galileo 7, kind of like the Magnificent 7.
And
only,
and I wonder if and I haven't done any research on this, it may be a double entendre title.
It sounds like it.
And that's really neat if it is.
I mean, how often do you put 7 people exactly into a shuttlecraft?
The reason I would never have really thought of that, well, besides the fact that I just, remember the shuttle being called the Galileo 7, is that, and also there are other places later where we see different numbers for different shuttles called Galileo, so there's more than, well, it's not just that it's an arbitrary number, that's the 7th one, I think. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. It is just that we focus on, 4 of them. And then the other ones are kind of in the background. So, like it never even occurred to me how many people were on the shuttle because they don't really draw attention to, Magnificent 7, there's a specific 7 people.
Yeah.
But you right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at Galileo 7 and you don't need all those people.
Yeah. Well,
some of them fade into the background.
Mag 7, you got basically the top 3 or 4 that you follow, and the rest of them are just, they have their shtick, but they're in the background. At least I think so.
Okay.
But
well, anyway.
Yeah, it's not Western experts. It's Treksperts.
If you do watch this episode, I'm going to recommend watching the remastered version.
Yeah,
they did some neat stuff with this, and I hadn't seen this one remastered before. That's how we watched it this time because we hadn't seen it that way. And
it really made me buy into the quasar thing.
Yeah, me too. And I thought that the neatest thing they did was what they made the stream of fuel look like.
Oh yeah.
The
when
green
they
stream
caught their fuel on fire.
Where like you could really tell, now it really makes sense that the Enterprise sees this. That would catch your eye, yeah. And I'm constantly impressed with what the Okudas did with those because, again, they're very true to the originals.
And very well integrated.
And they're well integrated.
Yeah.
You don't feel taken out, With this, I didn't feel like, we're in 2005. Now we're back in 1967. I didn't feel that way.
Me neither.
Really well integrated. It makes me want to watch a lot more of those. I've only seen a handful of them, and now that we've got our hands on them, I'm gonna try to watch some more of them that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, would you like to go ahead and rate the episode?
Sure. I'm gonna give this episode a 1.5.
That's exactly what I was gonna get.
And yeah, it's not horrible. It's not unwatchable. It's fun to go back and watch occasionally after it's been a year or two, but
it's certainly under average.
Yeah, it is below average. It's not very well written, and it has its problems.
Well, I too give it a 1.5, so that's all I have to say as well. Thanks a lot for watching Ask the Treksperts. Please give us any questions you might have for our Ask the Treksperts Multi-Topic Extravaganza, and also if there's any episodes you'd like us to talk about in the future, any episode requests, or any ideas for a full topic, leave that in the comments as well. And thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
And we'll see you next time.
The best is yet to come again.